This week, Caliban's War. So right up off the top, we're going to do a spoiler-free review of Caliban's War. But in order to do that, I will have to discuss at least some things that happened in Leviathan Wakes. So if you don't want anything spoiled from Leviathan Wakes, and actually one of the things I'm going to discuss is pretty darn big. So if you haven't read Leviathan Wakes, you might not want to be on this review. Although as far as Caliban's War is concerned, this will still be spoiler free. So right off the bat, this book is it's a step down. It's definitely a step down. There's no way, considering what happens in the end of the first book, considering that you no longer have Miller as a character, there's nowhere for it to go but down. He was by far the best thing about the first book, period. So if he's not in this book, you already have an uphill battle. You're already looking at this not being as good of a book, and it isn't. Then on top of the fact that you don't have your best character anymore, now you have the story feeling very samey. Oh no, there is a missing girl. The missing girl is no longer Mao, it's Meng. You know, it's like, really? So you have a story that feels kind of samey, and your favorite character is not there. It's obvious from page one that this book's going to be a step down. That kind of sucks because you want your trajectory to be always on the rise. You know, first book was really good. You're like, this was great. Where are we going to go? What are we going to do from here? And how is this going to become awesome? And then you get into the beginning and you're like, oh, it's not. Okay, well, You know, that being said, pretty much anything I said from the last video still applies. Anything I said about how amazing these guys are at their technical ability to write just well. And now we are on 2 solid books. We're talking 1,000 pages at least, over 1,000 pages of consistency. There are no dips in the quality or consistency of the writing. It is just, like I said, they picked a spot, they stuck their consistency there, and they nailed that all the way through. Just nailed it. On a level that I would say is basically unrivaled. I have not seen consistency on this level. The mystery is there again, but once again, and the mystery is good, but the mystery feels samey, just like the story feels a little samey. Although, anyway, considering that one of your point of view characters is a politician now instead of like a detective, so although I just said it leans into the detective, the mystery, but that's more the prax side of things. None of this matters. Anyway, so you're gonna move on to your characters. You know, characters is a big deal for me. And we lost Miller. So where are we going with my characters? Because, you know, this is important. And we introduce 4 point of views now instead of just 2, Holden and Miller. And you just kind of went back and forth between the 2. Now you've got 4, and you're going to rotate through these 4 points of view. The dad of the missing girl, Bobby the Marine, Avasarala the politician, and your good old boy Holden and his crew. Boring as ever. But, you know, I guess you have to have the main characters. God forbid it be Miller, you know, someone you want to read. But I digress. I miss Miller. But anyway, you get Avasarala, and she's really good. I thoroughly enjoyed Avasarala. Now, some of her like little cussing bit where, oh, she's overly crass and overly abrasive in the way that she speaks was fun to read sometimes, and other times it felt kind of juvenile, and you're just like, come on, guys, are we 12? But All in all, her character was great. I really, really, really enjoyed her character. She became the new standout for this novel. In lieu of having a Miller, we got an Avasarala. And she was really this book's standout as far as character is concerned. Bobby, on the other hand, not great. I didn't enjoy her. I did not like Bobby. She wasn't, she wasn't a bad character, but she wasn't, I didn't care. I just found myself not caring. When I got to her chapters, it just, I don't care. Move on. Prax was all right. Prax was, you know, but he felt like a lot of things in character work in these books are going, as the books go on, start to feel like missed opportunities. And Prax falls into that category. He wasn't bad. He wasn't good. Although he was the dad of the missing girl. That's a lot of meat. That's a lot of meat to work with. You can make that something, and you can make that something special. You can really get into the heft, the weight of what it would be like to be a dad, what that is like to have your daughter missing, that stress, that anxiety. That could have been a big punch in the gut when he came into the story, and it wasn't. I have no better way of saying it than it felt like a missed opportunity. Those dad vibes could have been next level, and they just weren't there. So his character wasn't bad, but it wasn't, he could have been a driving force, and he could have really brought the feels and all of that fun stuff to the story, and they didn't. Also, in all fairness, in order to do that, they probably would have had to slow down the pacing for his chapters in order to allow for those emotions to come to bubble up to the surface and come to the forefront, and for you to really feel invested in that way in his tale. And the way they have this pacing structured does not allow for what his character could have been if they had allowed him to be it. Now, let's keep in mind that I keep praising these people for their pacing and the fact that it never, ever, ever falters. So that almost feels like a decision had to be made, and they were like, nah, this man's emotions and his character is less important than this thing that we've got. The one good thing that we have got. I shouldn't say that because they have more good things than the pacing, but the best thing that we have. So why not stick with it? Do what works. Who am I to judge? And I can't help but say, you know, Holden and his crew, still boring as ever. I think I already said that, but I'm going to say it again. Who cares? Holden's still lame. You don't care about Naomi. Amos is very slowly kind of becoming someone who's fun to read, because he feels like a little unhinged in like a serial killer kind of way, and it's fun. And you get little hints at his backstory, but that's all you really need. You know, just kind of tease that he's really, really screwed up. So I actually enjoy that. I thought about just referring to Alex as insert, I think I said this last week, insert generic character here. Because he could be anyone from anything ever. Because he's the most non-character I think I've read like in a long time, maybe ever. That's what Alex is. But I have decided, because they actually gave him a couple key characteristics that have changed my mind. He's no longer insert character here. He is now bluegrass. Anyway, but he is. As I was reading, I was like, I think this is just bluegrass from Silverhawks. Anyway. So let's jump back to the plot for just a second. Other than the fact that it felt a little samey, the things that were really neat about the last book, like the big built-up mysteries and all that, like, oh my God, what's happening? What's going on? How's this all going to work? How's this all going to play out? What's this proto-molecule crap? All those big, what felt so big and so grand in the last book is either explained and done, or brushed aside and done, or glossed over and done. It feels like the big stakes just kind of deflated very quickly in order to set up other things and other stakes and other big things. So it's not like oh my God, there's no stakes in this book. No, there's stakes, but the stakes that you thought were going to be big in the last book were just kind of like, you know, it just all the air went out. They just didn't get the payoffs that I felt like they deserved as plot points, as really good, solid plot points. Anyway, but that being said, that feeling like you're reading a big blockbuster event in your hands as you're reading it, and it just is that massive spectacle that you get from big blockbuster movies or huge, big, expensive shows, that feeling never went away. So the things that it did great, that blockbuster feeling, that pacing, that intensity, that action-adventure romp feeling, all of that stayed and it didn't falter and they carried it through. So, you know, for all the little dips and things that I think personally fell off, the consistency of the quality that was so special about the last book is still special about this book. At the end of the day, it is definitely a step down from the first book. So whereas the first book clocked in at 7.5, I'm going to go ahead and knock a half a point off this one, and we're going to call this one 7. I don't feel like it dipped enough to be dropped down into the 6-point range, but it's definitely not as good as the last one. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to stick with 7.